Hello, friends. Welcome to the Veterinary Life Coach Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest for you. Her name is Shirley Billigmeier. She is a renowned body image specialist and eating consultant with over 50 years of experience. She wrote the book Inner Eating with the foreword written by Dr. Michael Jensen of the Mayo Clinic, which is super cool. She has pioneered the innovative Innergenics Process for weight management. And this approach goes beyond traditional dieting, focusing on fostering a positive relationship with the body and promoting mindful eating practices. This groundbreaking methodology emphasizes the gut-brain connection and offers a non-dieting approach to sustainable permanent weight loss. And I love this subject for this time of year because we're in January now and we've just been eating all through the holidays. Welcome to the podcast, Shirley. I'm so excited to have you.
It's great to be here. I love talking about this subject.
Well, and this is a subject I think that touches everyone, like I life coach, but I also weight coach. But I really think that we all have some level of dysfunction when it comes to food and the way we think about food, at least in the United States, I think. So we all need your services.
I'm very excited to be here and share how I even came to the answer for all of this, because eating was meant to give us energy. It was never meant to drain our energy. And I
Yes.
remember back in high school, and I was a cheerleader, and I was never like extremely overweight, maybe 10, 15 pounds, and I could lose it. But then it started creeping back. And I thought, what is this angst that keeps coming back? Like, "Ugh, what if I eat this? What if I don't eat this?" And it started consuming my head. And I thought, this is
Yes.
not make any sense.
Yeah.
And I remember and it followed me into college. I got my graduate degrees. And even when I started teaching, it was penetrating the young women in the school that I was teaching at. And I thought, it's destroying their ability to really live life, to really enjoy their life or be able to handle things that have nothing to do with eating. And like I said,
Yeah.
eating was meant to give us energy. It was never meant to drain us. So I thought, I'm going to figure out this once and for all. And that was my journey. And it's interesting because the first time I thought, okay, there's something different. When I first got married and I watched my husband just kind of walk away after he finished eating, he didn't overeat, and he didn't even think about it when he walked away. I said, "Isn't there any drag there? Don't you think like, gee, I wonder if I ate too much? I wonder if I," he said, "Why would I be thinking that? I ate, and now I'm going on and I'm going to live my life." And I thought, well, that's fascinating. I would really love that feel.
Right.
Then when I had my first child, I noticed here she is, an infant. She had a strong feeling of when she wanted to start eating. But in addition to that, she had a strong feeling when she wanted to stop her eating. She didn't care how big I was. She didn't care what degree I had. She didn't care what her nutritional needs were. She didn't even care about her diaper size. And so I thought,
That's
there,
fascinating. That's a fascinating way to look at it.
and I thought, oh my word, this was never meant to be in our heads. We were given this knowledge at birth. We just stopped listening. And
Mm.
that was the journey. And I thought, the start and stop of eating. It's not in our heads. It's in our gut. It's in our gut brain. We
Okay.
all own it.
Okay. So you said you started kind of in high school. You were a cheerleader, which there's a lot of like weight issues around that, right? I was a high school athlete, but there's always that little angst about your nutrition and the way your body looks when you're in high school and college. And so how did you end up where you are developing? I mean, you told me a little bit, but how did you end up actually developing the process that you have now?
Well, I knew that hunger was the answer. And I remember
Okay.
talking to different researchers around the country, and people who really understood that hunger was the answer, but they would continuously say, but we don't know how to get you there. We don't know how to get them there. We don't understand how to get them there. And a teacher at heart, I mean, I'm basically a teacher at heart. I thought, no, you need to teach people how to access that hunger. And that's what I kept developing more and more tools. Like in my book that I wrote way back in 91, I had the hunger scale in there and I had the understanding of some of the reasons why we were overeating. As I've gone through the years, I've developed more and more tools and then realizing there's a lot of beliefs in your gut brain. And if those beliefs are non-value based belief, they're going to be driving our bus. So I can give you an example of a non-value based belief in relationship to food. Maybe you were told you need to finish your food. That's
Oh, yes. I
non-value.
believe my dad, clean your plate, right?
There you go.
That was my generation. Our dads made us clean our plates.
And there's a non-value based belief that the
Mhm.
plate becomes more important and disrespectful of the feel of your body, of that
Absolutely.
gift that we were given at birth. So that's a non-value based belief. We may, and that has to do with food. But I always talk about putting food back in order for what we were just meant to have. We're not meant to have storage, which is my term for fat. I have this whole language.
Don't
Because
call it fat.
I never call it fat because in reality, it has information in there. It has stored information. It has energy in storage.
Right.
Every time you ate something, that feeling didn't go away. You just buried it with the food. So as that storage comes off, those beliefs start to surface, those thoughts, you'll start having these thoughts.
Mm.
So we need to turn around non-value based belief, whether it has to do with food or life.
So that's where you start
Yes. And
if
well,
you're
I
worried about.
first, yeah. But to
Yeah.
get there, what I do for the very first thing, because people say, well, how do you even start this whole process?
Yeah, yeah. How do you?
And I need to have people really aware that they're eating. So the first thing that I have them do is to sit before they eat. Always
Yes.
sit before you
Yes.
eat. Now your whole body has stopped in the motion of life. You are now really kind of connected to that gut brain. You can pay attention now. And in addition, you are aware that you are sitting. So I'm constantly making that a strong awareness that you need to sit before you eat so that there's that pause before that's that instant grabbing of a food. I mean, how many times do you walk past the counter and just grab something and you don't even during the day, you think, well, I didn't eat
Right.
anything all day long. But if you had sat before every time you ate, and then what I use is I call it a recording card. I don't tell them what to eat. I don't tell them, how much to eat. This is all your ownership because whoever owns the choice owns the power. So I want to empower my clients. So we need to be aware that we are sitting, but I need a concrete awareness that how many times did you sit and eat? So I have just a little notation system and I have a recording card that if they're sitting, and they're eating, they start by just sitting, then they take their pen to paper, which connects them to the gut brain. That's why you do journaling, because that hand to the paper,
Right.
it
Right.
connects you. It connects to
Yeah.
that gut brain. So now you record that you are starting to eat, just a line saying, I'm sitting, a horizontal line. I start with just that. So think about all the different steps before you put that first little bite of food in your mouth. You first, before you're going to grab something, you sit, you have that piece of pen and a paper, and I have a recording card that on a date, and anybody can just do it on a date and just put
Right.
one little horizontal line. Then that's it. Then they eat, and when they
So
stand
you're not
up,
recording the time, you're not recording what you're eating, you're not recording the
no,
calories, all of that. Like that is
no,
just too much.
that's too much. That's head stuff. That puts you back in your head. I just want to know that you're sitting and that you remembered to record that you're eating that eating occasion. And so so once you
Okay.
stand up, then you're not eating anymore.
I got you. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So now there's a strong awareness. That's how I start. That's how you
Yeah.
start the
Just
process.
awareness. That's how you have to start with everything, right? It's just being
Yep.
aware.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very much awareness of that you're eating, that you're actually eating. Now, if you happen to go by the counter and all of a sudden you grab food and you're eating it and you go, oh my word, I wasn't sitting. I just
Right.
haven't put two slanted horizontal lines saying, I grabbed something to eat. I don't care if it was a nibble. I don't care if it was a snack. I don't care if it was a
Right.
meal. If you're standing, we need to know you're standing because really part of the process is because we need some kind of a structure. If I'm not going
Sure.
to say what to eat, we need some kind of a structure. We feel good with structure. So this is the external structure as we build in getting back to reclaiming what we owned at birth. That's again reclaiming that original eating boundary. But we need stepping stones to get there because we've
Right.
lost it. We've just stopped
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah. Sometimes it's really, really buried in there too, right? If
Oh,
you've got a lifelong of stress eating or shame eating or whatever we all do, like we all have those mental connections to,
yes, yes.
uh,
So that's how I start. And also, even though in the car you may be sitting, you're driving. So that was one thing that you may be sitting, but I still have those double horizontal slanted slash marks because we don't want to be driving and eating
and
because you got to
eating, right?
focus someplace. You got to focus
Right.
someplace. And I truly want everybody to focus on the road.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and so many people overeat in the car because
Oh,
it's mindless.
it's mindless. It's
Mhm.
mindless. We're getting rid of all the mindless eating. So you
Right.
think about if you eliminated all the food, I don't care what the food is, that you have been eating when you're either standing or driving, you're starting to eliminate probably a
Sure.
lot of food.
Right.
And therefore, the storage starts dissipating because we're not meant to have storage. That was for a famine.
Right.
I don't know of one coming yet.
No. No, I just went to the grocery store and there's no famine there. The
There's,
place is packed with food.
there's no famine. So,
Right.
I work on getting rid of the storage, but I never ask them wait because that sets it up in the mind again.
Right.
If they want to wait, that's up to them. All I ask is your storage moving in the right direction? Now, if I'm
Uh,
working with someone who needs to gain weight, it goes one direction. If I'm working with someone who needs to lose weight, it goes the other direction. It's the same
right.
process because
Sure.
it's basically just eating out of order. And we're
Right.
just putting it back in order.
I love that. So I'm assuming babies get hungry. I don't know. I've had babies and they get hungry about every 2 hours.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
do you have any theory about that? Like how often people should sit down and eat, or does that not matter?
Okay, I don't have a rule on how many times people should eat,
Yeah.
and I even don't eat, I just don't even use that word should. It's like
Right.
what you've decided to eat,
Okay.
because it really changes. It kind of changes because you're starting to reclaim how your body is meant to eat. Now, okay, so now as you become adults or kids or you have a party, or you have a dinner engagement, you work with your hunger. You don't work against it. And that's
Mm,
the other thing. People start feeling very comfortable being hungry. Hunger is
yes.
a good thing. In this
Right.
country, we're trying to bury it, drug it, be fearful of it. And
Yes.
I no, eventually you become very comfortable with hunger. You become honoring of hunger instead of fearing hunger because it's a natural feel in your body that's connected to your gut brain. And you want to be connected to that gut brain because there's your identity. There's where beliefs are housed. And
Yeah.
as people have learned more and more about the gut brain, there are 9 messages to one from the gut to the head versus the head to the gut. So
Oh,
you're not,
explain that to us.
yeah. Okay, think about all of the messages coming from your body. Where do you feel things? You feel things like you might say, I've got butterflies in my stomach, or I just had a feeling. How did you know something? I just had a feeling. You've heard of the term wisdom of the body. That's our gut brain. There are
Hmm.
9 messages to one from the gut to the head versus the head to the gut. So we don't want to cut off those feelings of hunger. There's our wisdom. And as people work with me, they're just astounded at how much information comes up. We've just put a lid on it with all these rules of eating, and we've
Right.
buried the wisdom.
Right. That we are supposed to have, but we've changed. Well, tell me why you think that is. Like, why do you think that people in this country do become so focused on food and all the rules around it and Is it because of the dieting industry? Is it because we have too much good food in this country? Like, what do you think how do you think we get this way?
Okay, when you think about it, we have more information about nutrition and exercise machines
No,
than
and
we've
we're
ever
all
had.
fat,
And we're and it's around the world. I work with
right?
people all around the world. And the more information we get, the worse it gets
Yeah,
because
interesting.
that puts us in our head. Now all of a sudden we're saying, okay, what is so and so saying? What about this research? What about that research? And when you look at the research, think about what it does with food. Doesn't it keep changing? Like
Oh
one
yeah,
day, this
all
is
the time,
good all the time.
right?
And it's not that the research is wrong for that particular study, but
Hmm.
what are they studying? They're studying different groups of people. So
Yeah,
it's always going to come out different depending on what that particular group of people, what they lean towards. Do they lean towards more meat? Do they lean towards more vegetables? Can they handle coffee? Can they not? What are they using sugar for? What not? So there's all these rules, and if you try to follow the rules, you make yourself crazy.
right,
So when you think about it, if they say that shrimp is healthy and it has all these nutrients, but you eat it and you have a reaction, who's the ultimate authority?
right.
You are.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
You're the ultimate authority. So I start with teaching people how to access that authority because it's really the only authority that's real.
So it's like listening to your body when you eat certain things and how do you feel? How do you teach people to do that? If
There,
they're
that's
very
where
unaware of their body, because obviously if you're starting buried in all of this, it is going to be difficult.
Yeah, and that's why I start with just sitting. So
Okay.
I gradually add more and more tools because as we start clearing out the eating that's mindless and we start connecting with hunger, now some of those feelings will start to surface. But the beauty of the process that I teach is you can only go as fast as you can handle each situation. And that's what's nice because otherwise like I think I just read to you before we started talking about, they said, well, they hit a pothole. Well, anytime we get the eating where they really understand it and then they overeat, it's never a failure. There's always so much learning. And they'll say, oh, I hit a pothole. And they know when they hit that, it's not a failure. It's like, oh my word, there's so much information we need to unpack right there. So we
Yeah,
start unraveling as they gradually go through the process. And as the storage starts dissipating, thoughts will start to come up of maybe even from the past, because whatever you ate for is still kind of housed in your cells. That's like I
sure. Yeah.
worked with a therapist and I ran into him in New York. In fact, he's on my website. And he said, well, I just, I've worked on all my issues, but I just still have this eating issue. And as he worked through the process, he realized, okay, I understood everything with my head, but it was still kind of sitting in my cells. So as his story started to dissipate, these feelings and these thoughts from his past that he had worked on started coming forward. But he knew, okay, that was from the past, and he had worked on it with his head, but it had still been in his body.
Right, right. So I guess explain to me how you take that story that we have that's very deeply ingrained and how you start to unravel that in relation
Excellent
to the
question.
gut
Yeah.
that you're learning about, right? Because you're learning
Yeah.
about your gut, but you still also have all these deeply buried rules and regulations and stories around food.
Right. So let's see, I'll give you an example of a deeply buried story, because what you're saying is there's a belief in there that's
Yes,
driving your bus. And there are
right,
thoughts that come up from that belief, and that's a neural pathway. So you get an uncomfortable feeling in your gut, and it's buried because when that discomfort happens, and this is what it happens. This is how things get buried, is because hunger and your feelings are still basically in the same area. It's in your
sure,
gut. And
right,
so let's say that an infant, when they feel hunger, they ate, that feeling of hunger went away. That's when they wanted to stop. That's when they really wanted to stop. But then the mother might think, okay, the doctor says I need to feed them so much more, and the bottle's not done yet. So they start pressing on that little infant's lips, and there's tension. Well, the tension of hunger went away if I ate. Well, I wonder if this tension will go away if I eat. Well, it not only goes away, you get praised, you get a hug, good baby, good job. All of a sudden, what should have been a stop, now the overeating becomes a comfortable stop.
Yeah, but yeah.
And I had a 9-year-old, as I'm describing this to her, she said, "Oh, I see. We got comfortable with uncomfortableness." And I thought that was brilliant.
That is brilliant. Kids are
So I
so
always
smart.
use that story. So, okay, so now the food has taken care of that uncomfortable feeling. So what you just talked about in that question you just asked, how do we start accessing that? Well,
Yes.
when you're not hungry and you have a desire to eat, like I call it the desire to eat thought, all of a sudden there's a discomfort and you go up to your head and you go, okay, I want to eat. And you go, wait a minute, pause, stop, red flag, go back. Am I really hungry? And then you
Yes.
discover I'm not hungry at all. What is it? We start
What's the
asking questions.
discomfort?
What's the discomfort?
Yes. Yeah.
What's the discomfort? Then we start discovering, is it a belief down there? Or did somebody just say something and you felt bad about something? And it came from the outside. Sometimes it comes from the outside. Sometimes it comes from just a belief that has been in there for years. One client I had, she had a belief that I need to please my dad. I really can't do what I want to do. I need to please him. So she lost her ability to truly be valuing herself and what choices she needed to make for herself. And
Right.
as you started digging that out, she realized that belief gradually just kind of started dissipating, but old thoughts would start to come up and she needed to catch them. I said, catch those desire to eat thoughts, get them back on the right track. Don't go on the detour to eating.
Right. Right. Well, we talk about this a lot on my podcast and with the people that I coach with is how connected that brain is. And I call it the Chihuahua brain, that primitive brain, and
Mhm.
how it's always trying to protect us.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying is so true that if you're feeling uncomfortable, but it doesn't have anything to do with food, somehow your brain decided that if you just eat, you'll feel better. And so you kind of have connected those bad feelings in your body to pleasure that food brings you, which
Yes.
is it's false pleasure,
Right.
but somehow it makes you forget what you're feeling uncomfortable about.
Yeah.
And we talk about that a lot because until you figure out what that story is that's underlying and whatever is causing the pain, you won't be able to stop the behavior because it's kind of intimately connected to that thought that you're having or that story that you keep. Is that right?
Yeah,
Am
that
I
was
getting
an
it right?
excellent description. I always talk
Okay,
about in terms of the gut brain because there's a belief in there. And
sure.
until we identify that belief, we can't turn it around. But
Right.
the neural pathway, as soon as you feel that discomfort of that belief, the body is protecting you. It
Yes.
needs to feel good.
Right.
And that's why I like this process because it's all about value based. It's not deprivation based. It's all
Right.
value based. And when there's a non-value based belief in there, and you have the desire to eat thought, and you know you're not hungry, we need to unravel that and change the detour. And I always say, okay, the pathway is fixed. You don't need to go on the detour. But that thought, that instant reaction to that discomfort, when that neural pathway says, if I'm uncomfortable in my gut, I'm going to eating,
Right.
it happens in a split second.
Right. And we don't even realize it.
You don't even know that there was a thought before you had the desire to eat thought.
Right. Right. So
So,
that's part of the training that you're doing with people is
yes,
teaching them to realize that.
yes,
And the other
yes.
thing I like about what you say is that hunger is a good thing. That
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
uncomfortable, but it's good. I think a lot of this coaching yourself phenomenon, whether it's around food or anything else, is just realizing that when you're not feeling great and feeling happy, or that's all okay. And the power comes to when you can live with uncomfortable feelings and
Yes.
not try to tamp them down or ignore them or buffer them, cover them up with food. I
Yeah.
think that that's so important because we weren't taught as children that being uncomfortable is okay. We're always taught that you should be happy all the time.
Right. I'm
Yeah.
so glad you brought that up because
Yeah.
you're so right on with that. Because I want people to feel their range of feelings. I want them
Yes.
to feel their lowest of the low, and I want them to feel the highest of the high. And then you use your own thoughts and actions to connect, to understand. Sometimes, you have that feeling that's sad, and that's real. Maybe you've lost a loved one. That's real. That's real. But you don't want to stay in it, and you want to know that that's okay to feel that way. And then you kind of, and everybody has their own time frame of working through discomfort. But
Right.
that's why we were given four other pleasure senses to help us with that discomfort. Maybe we need just a distraction for a while, maybe because the body can't stay in that pain for any length of time. But that's why
Right.
we were given the gift of the other four pleasure senses to help us soften some of the pain that we can do nothing about. Some of the pain we can. Some of the pain is from an old belief that we need to change. But sometimes there's nothing to do about the pain. And the body can't handle all of that pain being in there all the time. It wants to get to a pleasant feel. It just wants
Right.
to get there.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so that's why we have the pleasure senses. That's why and we can use them unlimited, unlimited. But when we use food to bury that feeling and feel like we don't have the right to, it buries our creative mind. And I'll give you an example of a CEO that I worked with because he kind of understood the process. He understood the hunger scale. He knew when he was eating in order, when he wasn't eating in order. And then he came to me one day, he said, but at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, there's something in me that says I need to eat, but I don't need to eat. I know I'm
Right.
not hungry. What
Yeah.
is it that I
What is
can't
that? Yeah.
what is it that I can't get
Right.
past? I said, I know exactly what that is. Imagine now at 2 o'clock in the afternoon that eating didn't exist. Just imagine. What would that feel like? What would you do if eating didn't exist? And he looked at me and he said, I can't believe you asked me that question. I am CEO of a company and I don't have an answer. And, and I said, that's exactly what I'm talking about. When you've used eating above your own thoughts and actions, it buries your creative mind. I said,
Mm.
so it buried your ability to even process, even
Right.
think. So we need to now start brainstorming. What could you possibly do in your office? This is where you are, that
Yeah.
has nothing to do with eating.
Right.
So he sat there for a while. He thought, you know what? I could just look out the window. I said, yeah, there now we're starting. Now we've opened up our creative mind. What else could you do? He said, I could just walk down the hall, or I could just pick up these worry rocks. You just do that motion, that
Right.
repetitive motion that
Yeah.
calms people. That's why walking is good, repetitive motion that calms.
Hmm.
And and all of a sudden he listed like 15 things. And I said, look what using food out of order did to your creative mind.
Right. Because otherwise he would just eat something and go
Right,
mindless
right.
and
Mindless.
feel better
Mhm,
because he
mhm.
got a dopamine hit or whatever,
Yep.
whatever
Mhm.
he's eating. And
Yes,
then not really realize why he's doing what he's doing.
yes. And you
I
said a
can,
very excellent point, though. You said, because in that moment, it works. You feel better
sure.
in that
Oh yeah.
moment, but you've
Yeah.
done nothing about the true situation.
Right.
Nothing.
Right. Well, and I think that's why it's so difficult for people to unravel because they just I'll talk to people that have a weight problem or an eating problem or however you want to say it, that say, I just don't know why. Like, I don't
Mhm,
know why I eat all the time. I don't know why I can't stop eating,
mhm,
and until I mean, I was a binge eater when I was in college and it was all stress related. Like that was my way of getting over my stress is just by mindlessly eating.
right.
And so I went through a lot of that, but just realizing that about yourself is like, oh, that's why I do it. So now I got to figure out what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I can do differently in those situations to get rid of
Mhm,
that stress so I don't always damp it with food or tamp it down with food.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's exactly what it is with putting eating back in order. When you know what your body requires, and I want to get back to that whole hunger thing that you had mentioned too, that we want to feel hunger because there
Yes.
is a deep connection to ourself, but we want to work with our life. We don't, we want to work, we want to go to parties. I want people to have social engagements. I think it's
Sure.
great to have social engagements. But once you're comfortable with hunger, if you know you're going out to dinner at 5 o'clock and all of a sudden you get hungry at 3, once you're comfortable with hunger, 2 hours is no big deal. It's like I can,
Right.
and then if you have storage, and this is why I always tell people, I said, now it's time for the body to move over and use some of that storage you've been storing
Mm.
for a while. That's
Yes.
okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Hunger is a good thing. And the body can function much better when you've used up that storage. But even hunger, and I had one woman that I worked with, and before she would do this big speech, she spoke all over the world. She wanted to do this big speech. And she's, but I've got to eat something before I start speaking. I said, why? And she said, well, I might get hungry when I'm in the middle of the speech. And
Yeah.
I said, well, what do you think is going to happen when in the middle of the speech? She said, I might not make it through the speech. I said, and she was a scientist. I said, okay,
Right.
we're going to test this because she would be swimming every day. And I said, take somebody with you because I wouldn't want you to drown. And when you're
Sure.
swimming in your
Absolutely.
laps, so I said, I want you to go swimming when you're very hungry. And she said, well, I'll never make it through my laps. I said, okay, let's test this. So she brought a friend with and she started swimming her laps. She went there very hungry and she swam all her laps and her friend didn't need to help her get out. And she
She
was
actually
like,
did it.
she was like stunned. And
Yeah.
she said, oh my word, I've always had this feeling that if I get hungry, I need to eat something immediately. No,
Yes.
you don't. So
That's what we think. Yeah. I
yeah,
think we've been trained that way.
yes,
So what would
yes.
you say to, I think of this because I'm a veterinarian and I've worked in this industry for years. When we're working in a busy veterinary hospital, there are times that you do not eat. Like you
Yes,
just go all day
right,
without eating.
right.
And for me, it was just kind of like, oh, I haven't eaten all day. Like I didn't really make a big deal out of it.
Yeah,
But then when I would get home, I'd go to that, oh, I'm really hungry, and I would eat too much or
yes.
too late in the day or whatever. So, what do you say to people like us that have these kind of prolonged times of fasting that are very stressful because our
Hmm.
job is stressful?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
how do we train our bodies to be okay with not eating, but then be conscious of what we do eat when we get to eat? Does that make
Yes,
sense?
yes. It makes all the sense because I just worked with somebody like that, and she just finally achieved where she would, if she got so hungry because she was so busy during the day, and then she come home and she would just binge. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's what
yeah.
we do. Yeah.
Okay, so once two things, comfortable with hunger, and I also create what I call an internal calm. That
Mm,
exists in all of us, that internal calm. And what am I talking about? When you think of a baby, you value that infant. You look at that infant, there's value. What does value feel like? What does it feel like? Feels like
mm,
if you value something, what does that feel like? Feels
right.
it feels good. It feels,
It's
and I say, well, what
interesting.
does good feel like? And
Right.
I would keep working on this. And what is it? It's no pain. There's no pain.
Oh, okay.
No pain. So
Yeah.
so I'm always working with my clients of creating that internal calm because that's our foundation. And then we have this range of motions over it and then we live our life. And
Right.
that internal calm going into our body is the most calming place of all when you know you can access it.
Mm,
So when you get home, you first create that calm, then you feel what your hunger is, and whatever you ate or didn't eat in that day makes no difference with that hunger feel now. It's
right.
what do you like? Let's say you're at a one, you're zero, and you go, okay, I'm just going to pay attention. I know I'm really hungry, but and then usually I'll have people kind of stop midway as to what they think they need to eat, and then just calm it down. I'm always working with people at eating slowly so that
Mm,
it can register. And then eventually they go, okay, they're calm, they sit down, they don't rush right into eating, they're calm, then they tap into hunger. Now you don't have all those other reasons why you ate because now you're calm. There's your foundation.
Yeah.
That's what's really key. And then making sure that you're not eating a lot because you didn't eat all day. So that's
Right.
another thing.
It's just a thought. I
Yeah.
haven't eaten anything all day, so I should
Yes.
be really hungry.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I love to realize. That's why I love life coaching so much, is realizing that everything you do and everything you feel is because you're thinking something.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's fascinating because you come home from work and you're like, I haven't eaten all day.
Yeah.
I should have eaten all. Why didn't I eat? And
Right.
and then you talk yourself into eating this huge plate of food, and then you're miserable and you're sluggish and you feel like crap because you ate all this,
Right.
junk.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and,
I,
and then you
I
fall
don't
asleep
even
on the
label.
couch, which isn't healthy either. So do you tell people when they're trying to create this inner calm to meditate? Like what is your recommendation if somebody's like, I don't know how to get calm after work? What would you tell
Um,
them to do?
I teach them in the moment how to do it because we all own it.
Yes.
It's we all own it. So I can do that in a few seconds. I mean, I can just teach them, okay, what does value feel like? No pain. Access it. Go down deep into it. It's there. We don't even know it exists. We've
Right.
lost it. But it
Right.
exists. We're all value. We all humans. We all own that,
Ah,
and we all
yeah.
own the hunger signal. We just have lots of man interference,
Yes.
interference from the outside world, because those
Yeah.
gifts were given to us at birth.
Right. So tell me about the hunger scale if people haven't heard about it before. I can't remember if I've talked about this on a podcast, but
Okay.
tell me about your hunger scale and how that works. So if
Okay.
people want to use
So
it, they can use it.
yeah, yeah, good questions. Really good questions. On a hunger scale from 0 to 10, 0 starved, 10 stuffed, 5 is the feeling of nothingness, balanced. That's when hunger has gone away. There's no more feeling there.
Okay.
That's the stop. That's when we were meant to stop. So if so like a 0 is starved, 10 is stuffed, 5 is the feeling of nothingness, 4 would be okay, I'm starting to get a little bit hungry. Then a little 3 is a little bit more. 2, the growling of the stomach. You start feeling that stomach growling, and that's how that end goes. And the other end, when you've eaten just a little bit too much, you feel a little crowded. That's a 6. Then a 7, you're like, okay, I ate a few more ways too much. And then 8 is like, oh my word, why did I do this? And then 10 is like, oh my word, just
And
put
it's
me to bed.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Just put me to bed.
Yeah.
So if you put your mind, so think the scale 0 to 10. So if you put your mind, you do this yourself and you can show the audience how you do it. And you put your mind in your stomach, what number would you be at in this moment?
Mm.
In this moment, what number would you be at? If I asked you that, what number would you be at?
Right now,
Yep.
well, I just ate lunch before I got on here with you, so I'd probably say a 6 because I probably
Okay.
ate more than I should have.
Sure. Yeah. And you knew it
And I
like
ate
that.
fast because I went to
Yeah.
the grocery store and I came home and I was like, I got to do a podcast. So yeah, I might say a 6 right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Okay.
I'm full, but not painfully full.
Yeah. 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 So now you know. So to me, that would be like, okay, now
I
it's going
should
to
have
be a while
eaten a
before
little
you
bit
get it
less
too.
than I
Yeah.
ate
Yeah.
in the time frame that I ate it. Probably if I'd
Right.
have eaten slower, I would have probably felt a 5 earlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
But
love that.
everybody knows it. There's,
Right.
it's like, it takes me, like you said, how do you teach that? I can do that in a few seconds
Yes. Yeah.
because we all own it.
Yeah. I think the trick is just stopping and asking yourself that question.
Yes.
That's the tricky part because we
Yeah.
don't always. We just kind of like zip through our day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's using your mind not to judge yourself, but to ask yourself.
Yes.
Be curious.
Yeah. Be curious. That's a really
Be,
good thing to say. Be
yeah, be
curious. I
curious.
think
Be curious.
especially about yourself.
Hmm.
I think if you're trying to make any life change, that curiosity about why you do the things you do is always the first step.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect because that's what this whole process is about. And it's interesting because I would have someone say, because it's the recording, and the recording, sometimes people say, oh, do I need to record? And of course, it takes a split second but
Sure.
it's just
Right.
remembering the paper and remember the pen, whatever.
Right.
And when one person came to me, he said, yeah, I'm done with the recording. I said, okay, don't do it anymore. And he looked at me and said, well, I never thought I'd hear you say that. And I said, well, I'm just curious why you would stop. And he said,
Right.
well, because I always go on and off things, on and off diets, on and off. And I
Right.
said,
Right.
okay, this is not my program. It's a
Yes.
process to
Not a
guide
diet.
you to you.
Right.
What other path are you going on to learn more about you?
Right.
And then it was like a light bulb. He said, you're right. He said, it isn't your program. You're teaching me how to get to me. And what other
Yes.
path do I want to be on?
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's so important because we're so used to people telling us from the outside
Yes.
how much to exercise, what exercises to do, what to eat, what not to eat, take out sugar, take out flour, no gluten or
Yep.
whatever, like all of those rules. But what we're not doing is we're not accessing why we do what we do and fixing that,
Yes.
or at least learning about it. You don't even really have to fix it, right?
No, no. You have to understand the why. Be
Yes.
curious as to the why. And then I'm constantly cleaning out eating that when you're not hungry. I'm constantly having people change value-based to non-value-based to value-based so that they feel eventually that calm is a good feeling. Coming back to yourself is always good. But that's why I don't talk about size and weight. That becomes
Right.
the byproduct because if you're in this home, your body, and you don't like it, how are you going to listen to it?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
people say, well, if I'm not working on my size and weight, then how do I keep that in check? And I said, okay, so let me ask you this. If you ate only when you're hungry, just to a five, and you felt hunger, would you eat less food? And they say, yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Almost
if you,
everyone.
yeah, ate less food, would you lose weight? And they said, well, yes. I said, okay, so let's just put size and weight on the shelf. I'll ask, you can feel in your clothes if the storage is moving. Let's just put
Right.
that on the shelf because now we're working at the source of the issue.
Right.
And
Yeah.
we're doing it from your choice because, like I said in the beginning of this podcast, whoever owns the choice owns the power.
Mm.
Why do you think you can have businesses that telling you what to eat? And it keeps failing. Why?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
whoever owns the choice owns the power.
Owns the
I
power.
want to make sure I empower my clients so they feel that sense that they can start and stop eating based on respecting and listening to themselves.
Yes. I love that. So when you say energetics process,
Mhm.
that's what you're talking about. All
Yes,
these things
yes.
that you just told me.
Yes, I created this energetics process to guide the person back to themselves while putting eating in order. And that's the good thing because eating is what sustains your life. Basically,
Right.
when you have eating in order, life becomes in order. That's what's amazing. They're amazed what they learn and how they learn to handle discomfort because they're
Right.
developing those tools on a regular basis so they can
Yes.
handle being uncomfortable and making a decision, choice, decision, action, what they want to do with it, or if they need to let it go because there's nothing to do.
Yes.
So
Well,
they
I love that
develop,
because in order to get anything done, you have to have some level of being uncomfortable.
yes,
That's
yes,
any
because
goal, anything you want to get better at. If you want to, get better at a game or sports or work, it all takes feeling a little bit uncomfortable on purpose.
I'm glad you brought that up
Yeah.
because I changed the word. I start with uncomfortable because first, when you start taking this eating off, it feels
Right.
like pain. Then it changes
Yes.
to discomfort. Then it changes to a little bit uncomfortable. Then it changes to there's a message coming.
Oh, so that's a good way to look at it.
There's a message
There's
coming.
a message. Mm,
There's a message coming.
I love that.
What is the message trying to tell you?
Okay. So that would go over into everything in life. Something
Yes, you
bad's
got it.
happening at work. A client is angry. What's the message?
Mhm. And that's why I say I need that calm because if you hate your body, that's why I can't do size and weight because
Right.
people say, well, I can't like my body until my storage is gone. I said, yeah, we're not meant to like our body if the storage is there because we're not
Right.
meant to have storage.
Yeah.
But in this moment, there's nothing to do about it. So
Right.
if you're uncomfortable with something and there's nothing to do, what do they call that? They call that depression. Well, I don't want you
Yeah.
to be in a depressed state.
Of
So
course not.
let's just put size and weight on the shelf. We
Yeah.
know we are working on it.
Sure.
But I need to have you create that calm that's valuing yourself so you can listen to the messages.
I love
Otherwise,
that.
we're losing so many messages because you hate your body. And then
I
you're
love
in this.
listening to the messages. That's a good way to think about it.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
And also, that with you don't wait to start living your life when you reach a certain size and weight. It's like I said,
But
okay, so your whole goal,
so many of
oh,
us do that, don't we?
yeah, I know it. Well, when I get to certain size, then I'll do this. And I said, okay, you get to
Right.
your gravestone, your gravestone said I did a great job of being thin. I don't think
Right. Right. Or I was too fat to live my life, so I
yeah,
was just fat.
yeah,
Like that
yeah.
doesn't make sense, right?
No, no, no.
Yeah.
So I work on life right away. We start
Yes.
working on life and we start eliminating the the mindless eating. Then we start working on what's driving you to eat, the desire to eat thought. What's driving that? We start turning things around. I have beliefs. There's all kinds of things that go. That's the whole energetics process to guide you to you. But I need to have you create that value when people say, well, I value myself. Well, that sounds too esoteric. Okay, I value myself. I want
Right.
to have a feeling that they actually can feel what that feeling of nothingness. And that's why when people have used eating out of order, that feeling of calm feels like not enough
Mm.
because they have.
But then we're not enough. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so that feeling of using food, it kind of robs in the moment it helps you feel better, but it robs the true joy of living your life because it went above your head. It went above everything else. So when I start working with people, they say that life feels kind of flat. Well, at first, because you've always had this food coat that's higher than your own thoughts and actions because you
Right.
used it out of order,
Right.
but it actually robbed you of really feeling true joy in living your life when you had true joy, when you could really absorb the joy that you had.
Yeah. I love that. So what did I not ask you that I should have before we get too close to the end of
Ah,
this? What did we not
is
talk
there
about?
any failure in this? That's the beauty of the
Okay.
process.
Yeah,
There,
let's talk about that because we
yeah.
always think that we start a diet and then we fail. And then we
hmm
start a diet like
hmm
every day you'll say,
hmm
"Oh, tomorrow I'll start."
Yeah.
So
That's
there's
why
no
when
fail.
I work with people, I love people to talk to people that I've worked with because you just don't know how much is in this until you're in it because
Right.
it's like all of a sudden it's about abundance. It's not about deprivation. There's an excitement and people say, how would you even believe that losing this weight there was an excitement to it, but it wasn't because you restricted anything. It was because you
Right.
felt abundantly it connected into life. You didn't have
Yes.
this haze of what you're eating, what you're not eating, what all that haze was lifted and your real life surfaced. And sometimes people don't want to look at their real life, but it's there. But then as they get through that, they go, oh my word, there's so much there. So
Right.
there is no failure. It's like and exactly what you said when I said, you get to the end of your life and you say, oh, I did a great job being thin. And then you said, which was perfect, was you said, or I didn't live my life because I was too heavy. I mean,
Yeah.
you just like we want
Yeah,
to
it's
live.
absurd.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's absurd. We want to
Yeah.
live life. So I
Right.
start with people really living their life and they start to see there is no failure. There's just
Yes.
learning opportunities.
Learning. Yeah. Yeah. If we could replace that failure word,
Yep. Learning.
and that's what we try to do. Yeah, it's just life.
It's
Yeah,
life. It's
I
life.
say that sometimes because my father-in-law was a surgeon, a human surgeon, and he was famous for saying that's life. No matter what was going on around him, he would be like, that's life. And he
That's
was
life.
just a very calm individual.
There you
And
go.
it sometimes made other people angry because they're like, he never gets upset. He never, because he had that attitude that this is what
Mhm.
life is going to do, and you just stay with it. And
Yeah.
yeah, I love
And
that.
interesting that you identified him as calm.
Oh yeah, yeah, he always was. Now I don't know what he felt like on the inside, but
Mhm.
he always was calm on the outside.
Mhm.
He was
Mhm.
just a
And I want
calm,
people to
gentle
feel,
man.
yeah, and I want people to feel calm on the inside.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
people to feel calm. Like that's
That
the best place to come back to. That's your
right
home.
is that value and
hmm
calmness. I love
hmm
that.
Yep. Yep.
That's so cool. Well, tell everybody on this podcast before we wrap up where they can find your book. Tell them the name of it again. and anything else you want them to know about
Yeah,
you.
because the beauty of, because I always love working one-on-one, but now
Yes.
I have an actual course online, but I still
Okay.
work with it one-on-one, but
Yeah.
it helps people, have it there. I have over 60 videos, I have handouts. I basically am with a person 24/7 through the process. The course itself is 3 to 4 months, but they're given all the tools now, and then they have them. So I can end up
Yes.
working with more people, and I
Nice.
work with people all over the world because I do
Right.
it I do it online.
Virtually like this. Yeah.
Mhm. So I do it this way. So they can go into my website, which is www.innergetics. It's INNERGETICS. And I created that name years ago. And the only one
Yeah.
that registered.
It sounds like a name from the 90s.
Yeah, it was
Was
90.
it the 90s?
Yes, the 90s.
Okay. I
Got
love it.
it. And it's
Yes. You can
energy,
tell I
it's
lived through
really,
the 90s.
yeah, energy from within. And when they go onto my website, they can sign up for a free consultation to see, okay, is this something I want to do? Is there something more I need to know about this? And
Right.
and then I give them, names, because everybody that I work with wants to say, just tell them. They can talk to me. They can,
Right.
because they get
Yes.
excited about it.
Yeah.
And then there's also a place on there that they can get the book, but I can send you the link directly to
Yes.
you
Yeah. If
so
you
they
send
can
me the
go.
link, I'll put it in the notes.
Okay, that'd be perfect. But
Good.
I just want people to know that there's an answer to recapture that joy of eating, because
Yes.
there's no rules. The only rules are your own wisdom.
Yeah.
Your own wisdom.
Well, it kind of brings up another question. I know we're trying to wrap this up, but it kind of popped into my mind. Tell people why it's so important to have someone like you or a life coach, somebody like me. Tell people why that's important to have a coach when you're trying to make any big change like this, because this is a
Yeah.
big change, right?
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't, when they're going through it, it's gradual. So it doesn't feel like it's gigantic. Like they don't have to make
Right.
big changes.
But
But
it feels big. If you're
it,
in this position where food has
yeah.
always been an issue for you, it
Ah,
feels huge.
got it. Yeah, no, that makes all the sense in the world. Because in working with food, it's a moment to moment process. Those thoughts happen in that moment. And even though I have the course and there's 13 parts to it, and at the end of
Right.
each part there's a checkpoint, I still say, I want to hear from them. I want to hear the thoughts.
Yes.
And because I can track, because I live in the base of my gut brain. I bring
Right.
the unconscious to the conscious. So I can tell in an instant when things are going off track. So
Right.
you need a coach to kind of keep things on track so
Yeah.
that you don't waste any more time. What I
Somebody
don't
that's
want
been
people to
there.
do,
Yeah.
wasting time on this,
Yeah.
because I know this stuff. I've done it over
Right.
50 years. I've worked on
Yeah.
this a long
Well,
time.
and our brain is so powerful,
Oh, oh,
but the hard part is you unraveling your own brain.
yes.
Like I can
But-
help a lot of other people, but I have to get someone to help me with my
Yes.
brain because it's
Yes.
so strong.
Well, it's so interesting when you say because your thoughts, and you'll hear me tell my clients all the time, your
Yeah.
thoughts can be your best friend or your worst enemy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
You want to make
They
your
run
thoughts.
everything.
Yes. You want to
Yeah.
make your
Yeah.
thoughts your best friend.
Right. And we don't really know how to access them until we get
Right.
coached or have a therapist or, somebody to help you unravel all
Right.
that.
Right.
Well, this
So
has
it's
been
what's
super
key.
fun. Anything else you want to say before we kind of close up this podcast?
No, it's just been really fun. That's why I'd listen to your words and I go,
It
okay,
went by really fast.
it went too fast. And I listened to your words. I thought, okay, I got to remember to say that because you brought up a really good point.
Well, we can always get together again if
Yes,
there's a lot of questions about this. So if
sure.
anybody's listening and they're really interested in this subject, and I think most people are, I mean, many people struggle with eating and that gut brain connection that you talk about. So if you're interested and you want me to have Shirley on again, send me an email, send her an email, put it in the comments of this podcast. And any questions you have, reach out to one of us. And if you can't get a hold of Shirley, I'll get a hold of her for you
Yeah,
because I have
great.
her email address.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you can post my email address on there.
Okay, I
Yeah, that's not
absolutely
a
will. Well,
problem.
I'll put your
Yeah.
website on there too, so people
Okay.
can see where all your stuff is held. Well, this has been really fun. I appreciate it. We should be talking in January, so everybody will have the
Yes.
food thing fresh on their mind from all their holiday eating. So this will be
Right.
a really timely podcast.
Yeah. No, this is really fun.
Yeah,
Really
it was
fun.
a good
Thank
time.
you.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. This is Shirley Billigmeier. I got to say that right, Billigmeier. And I really appreciate having you here today. So have a beautiful week, everyone. Bye. Bye, Shirley.
Bye now.